All right, it is 5:30 and you are here for investing in home creation. And this is part of a series on how we can all use our economic power, flex those muscles, to enhance and sustain our communities. So thank you for committing to being here on a really nice evening. We'll make it worth your while. First part of being able to do that is some ground rules for a successful experience. One is, unless you're speaking, please keep yourself on mute. That'll help us all. And I'd like to ask everyone to please introduce themselves in the chat. Your name, your location, and what brings you here, your organization or your interest. You can throw that in there, that'd be great. We're gonna have presentations and you might have questions as those presenters are speaking. Please throw those in the chat too. Nancy LaRoe, you want to wave your hand, Nancy? She's in the upper corner there. She's the mastermind behind this series of events, and she's also our tech master this evening. So if you need help, you can reach out to Nancy through the chat as well. So she's going to be watching there for the questions and any help requests. We are recording this event, and that recording will be uploaded to YouTube and it'll be sent to everyone who registered, so you can pass it on if you want to. Also want to remind everybody, this is an educational event. We're here to learn from each other, and the information here tonight is educational in nature. It's not specific legal, accounting, or investment recommendations. We're not that kind of experts, although people who are talking to you are. Vital Communities is not. There is some philosophical and moral grounding for our presence here tonight, and we should acknowledge that. And I'll read this aloud, that the Upper Valley has served as a site for meetings and exchanges among Indigenous peoples since time immemorial. We are here tonight with the intention of sustaining a nurturing environment, society, and economy for generations to come. The land we live in was created by the wisdom and the mistakes of every inhabitant before us, from Indigenous Abenaki to our current neighbors. And so we're here to honor our obligations to the past and to the future inhabitants by using our energies wisely right now, today. And I think I should note that the crocuses in the background are an inspiration of the beauty of our environment. They come from Nancy's yard. She took that picture today. Some inspiration is also available from the people who have sponsored and partnered to make this possible. They've made a social and financial commitment because they realize that they and we are all part of something bigger than ourselves when we're gathering like this to talk about challenges and how we can address them. Move us along to the agenda tonight. I think it is safe to assume that everyone here knows that housing is part of a long-term challenge. We have not been creating the homes that our communities need to sustain themselves. We can help create lower cost homes in our community, and that will have a powerful impact on our environment, on our society, and our economy. So we have 4 presenters here this evening who can show us ways that we can achieve those impacts. Ken Wells from Mascoma Bank. You want to raise your hand, Ken? People see who you are. Thanks. Jen Hopkins from the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund. There's Jen, you can see her, yep. Will Bongia from the Vermont Community Loan Fund. Thanks, Will. And Jen Risley from the local crowd, Monadnock. I'm going to let each person introduce themselves as they show us how we might invest for the kind of social, environmental, and equity and community impacts we're looking for. As people are speaking, please put your questions in the chat so we can talk about them after the presentations. So without further ado, I'm going to pass to Ken. And I'll mute myself.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, great to see everybody. I'm Ken Wells, and I'm responsible for mortgage and consumer lending at Mascoma Bank, where I've been for a long time, 31 years. So I'm going to talk just briefly about community banking, and I'll weave in Mascoma a little bit because that's what I know best. So banks, kind of at their core, are actually borrowers. We borrow money from our customers in terms of your deposits. So your savings account or your checking account is actually a loan to the bank, which we then turn around and lend most of it out into our communities. So not going to spend a ton of time on banking, but your community banks are typically lowest risk. Most of your deposits are FDIC insured. The FDIC has paid 100% of claims since the beginning of time. Trade-off is it's a low, obviously it's a lower return, particularly now given that interest rates are quite low. If people are truly interested in a higher rate of return, most of us can do other things in a different division, but that's not really what we're talking about tonight. So other flexibility is, you can have an account where you can take the money in and out of, multiple times during a day, or you can tie it up for a higher return over 5 years. But kind of more importantly, the topic of tonight is what happens with that money. So that your deposits get lent back out into your community, and community banks put a much higher percentage of those deposits to work in the form of home loans than bigger banks who are more interested in other types of lending. So, for example, we don't have a big credit card division that we need to fund. So again, community banks are more focused on real estate lending. Mascoma Bank is a mutually owned certified B Corp or Benefits Corp. So we, like other mutual banks, and Claremont Savings Bank is a mutual bank, and Wells River Savings Bank are mutual banks that are nearby. We have no stockholders, so our mission is not to generate the highest rate of return for a stockholder. As a benefits corp or benefit corp, we have a more balanced approach. And other examples of B Corps, as we like to call them, are Ben & Jerry's, Patagonia, Cabot Cheese come to mind. So these are more companies that have also a social mission behind them. As a B Corp, we're focused on our customers, our communities, our employees, and the environment. And you can flip that, Mike. So how do we put money to work? And this is just a quick pie chart of how we put that money to work. So the biggest bucket we have in terms of loans are what we call 1 to 4 family real estate. The bulk of these are home mortgages. If you own your home, that's what we do the majority of our lending in. So and then the little orange slice there, that is what we call multifamily real estate. So that would be like apartment buildings, and that could also be construction projects that we're financing to build more homes for sale to the public. So we obviously do other types of loans, loans to help restaurants, florists, hotels, and so on, that don't directly support housing, but 57 cents on every dollar that you deposit in a community, or our bank anyway, and our bank is pretty typical that way, gets lent back out into your communities in the form of housing. Last slide for me, Mike. So this is kind of our poster child for success, and in terms of what investment in a community bank can do, or depositing in a community bank can do. So this is a Tracy Street project in West Lebanon that was the Twin Pines Housing Trust was the developer. It's right behind our West Lebanon branch. We donated the land for that. So this is 29 units, 1 to 2 bedroom apartments. 18 units are reserved for those making no more than 50% of the area median income, and 11 are reserved for those not making more than 60% of area median income. So none of these folks make much more than high 30s thousand dollars a year. So just think of kind of retail workers or many other service type workers. This is just desperately needed housing supply close to a bus stop, in a great location, and a really well-built project. So this is the type of thing that depositing in a local bank can help create. So we had other partners along the way, but again, a project that we're really proud of. So that's all that I have for now. Look forward to answering any questions near the end. And I'm going to pass it off to Jen Hopkins from the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund.
Thank you, Ken, and thank you to Vital Communities for such a great conversation tonight on local investing. I'm Jen Hopkins with the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund, and we're a nonprofit that provides lending where traditional lenders are not able to go. And our founding principles are twofold, like two sides of this bridge. First is that people in New Hampshire with low incomes, small businesses and nonprofits can just lack the access to loans to better their lives. And second is that there are people with access to capital that want to help those folks with low incomes, but don't have the expertise or the ability to manage those loans. And that's where we come in. We are the bridge between supporters and local borrowers so that neighbors can help neighbors all over the state of New Hampshire, local investing at its best. Mike, the next slide, please. So here's how it works. If you can picture a sap bucket this time of year, the money that local people and institutions invest in us, combined with our own capital, creates a pool of funds that we lend out around the state of New Hampshire. Right now, we have, you can see on the left-hand side, about $173 million total in our lending bucket, made up of $144 million of investments in us, plus $29 million in gifts to us as a 501c3 charity that we lend out for housing, childcare, business finance. And you can see on the right-hand side, we've loaned out $371 million since our start in 1983, with over 90% of that money going to loans for housing. Mike, the next slide, please. So to talk about the big picture of our local impact, over the last 6 years, we've loaned nearly $6.5 million in the Upper Valley. So we have 4 loans to resident-owned communities like Mascoma Valley in Canaan and the Lakeside Co-op in Enfield that secures 107 homes. There are 29 multifamily apartments like Twin Pines Parkhurst Building in Lebanon for people with low income, especially people who are chronically homeless. There are 26 people in the Upper Valley who've become homeowners through our Welcome Home Loan mortgage program with an average mortgage size of $56,000. Now that's truly affordable. And we also lend to small businesses like Lou's Restaurant in Hanover and nonprofits like the Whaleback Ski Mountain in Enfield. And all of our loans come with what we call technical assistance. That is customized education, training, networking to get borrowers the best kind of help that they need to succeed. And this is really the secret sauce to our borrowers' success. And our borrowers work really hard and they repay us over 97% of the time. And that track record is how we know that these loans are financially viable and we can extend the reach of the conventional lending market. Mike, next slide, please. So in the area of housing, tonight I want to go deeper on 2 local stories. And first is our work with manufactured home resident-owned cooperatives, or ROCs. And we focus here because they are so affordable. With an average home price of about $69,000, that makes manufactured housing one of New Hampshire's most important sources of affordable and workforce housing. But your manufactured home is not very secure if you don't own the land underneath it, and that could be sold out from under you at any time. So when neighborhood residents join together to form a cooperative and purchase the land under their homes, that affordable home becomes more stable and secure basically forever. So this picture is Mascoma Meadows, a 50-home resident-owned community in Lebanon, and it's the first ROC in New Hampshire producing solar power. So the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund helped the residents of Mascoma Meadows organize to buy their park as a cooperative. We made them a loan to purchase the community, and we continue with the technical assistance and education to keep the neighborhood running smoothly as a homeowner cooperative. And you can see in this picture, Mascoma Meadows recently set up a 384 panel solar array installed by Revision Energy, who we've also helped with a business loan that is forecast to save each of the cooperative's low and moderate income households nearly $270 annually. So we see that as just a win-win-win for homeownership and the energy savings in Mascoma Meadows. And like the next slide, please. I also want to introduce you to your neighbors, Kevin and Juanita from Grantham, as an example of our Welcome Home Loans, that is homeowner mortgage loans for people buying manufactured homes. So when they had a house years before, Kevin's credit was wrecked when his financial information was stolen. Juanita had gone through 3 surgeries and needed costly medication. And after months of choosing between the mortgage payment and food and medicine, Kevin and Juanita declared bankruptcy and had to give up their home. So even years later, they were not able to get bank approved to buy again, though our Welcome Home mortgage team was able to look at the person's full financial picture with more flexibility than typical mortgage guidelines. And when our loan officer called and told Juanita that she and Kevin had been pre-approved for $114,000 to buy this home on a nice piece of land in Grantham, Juanita's voice cracked, then dissolved into tears. It was finally their turn to put a good, safe roof over their heads again at a price that they could afford, saving $535 every month compared to their prior rent. And like the last slide, please. And I want to close with some thoughts and thanks for investors. We take investments from the community and loan them out to vetted borrowers like Mascoma Meadows and the Ordway family. We pay our investors back on a fixed date with a fixed interest rate and have a 37-year history of repaying every single one of our investors. Especially important right now are low interest investments of 0 to 2% that enable us to lend out at low cost to meet borrowers where they are. And many people use this investment option for their savings, to save for college or save for retirement, as they won't need the money for a while. So they achieve their financial goals while also doing social good in the communities. So examples of institutions who invest in us include local nonprofits like Vital Communities and Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center, and banks such as Mascoma and Ledyard. Thank you very much. In the Upper Valley, we have also 33 individuals right now investing more than $2.8 million with the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund. So that's $2.8 million invested by individuals in the Upper Valley, helping to support the $6.5 million in loans that we've made in the Upper Valley. And that is the true neighbors helping neighbors, hyper-local investments. And truly many, many thanks to all our investors on the call tonight. 3/4 of our 660 investors are individuals. So you as an individual are welcome to join and invest with that impact, including in your area of the Upper Valley. As a next step, I'd say go to our website, communityloanfund.org. There's an invest button at the top of the page that you can learn more. Now here's where I'm going to hand it off to our colleague, neighbor at the Vermont Community Loan Fund, Will Belangia.
Thank you, Jen. And thanks to everyone at Vital Communities, Mike and Nancy and everyone else there for having me here. And thank you all for joining on this beautiful evening. So my name is Will Belangia. I'm the Executive Director of the Vermont Community Loan Fund. And I've been with the Vermont Community Loan Fund for almost 30 years. And we operate very similar to the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund, as Jen just discussed. I'm going to go over, hopefully not too much repetitiveness, to what Jen has discussed. But I will say that we started, the Vermont Community Loan Fund started in 1987. And we did model our fund off of the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund, which had been around for about 5 to 7 years before that. And so when a group of Vermonters got together to think about how to invest locally throughout Vermont, they looked at different models that were existing. And at that time, in the mid 80s, there was an explosion of community loan funds. Explosion. I shouldn't say an explosion. There were several community loan funds just starting out that were just trying to think through the exact question that we in some ways are discussing still today, which is how folks can invest in their local community and have impact locally, tangibly, and maintain the sense of place and the sense of community that we all strive to achieve. So the Vermont Community Loan Fund is a nonprofit, just like New Hampshire. We're a community development financial institution, and our mission really is to create opportunities that lead to healthy communities and financial stability for all Vermonters. We do this by providing equitable access to capital and to find capital solutions to issues of poverty and of inequality. We seek to serve underserved and low income and low wealth individuals and families and communities. So we started in 1987, as I said, and the first thing that we started with was financing affordable housing. Because as surprising as it is, in the mid 80s, there was an affordable housing crisis, which boggles the mind that we still have an affordable housing crisis. And so that was the first focus of the Vermont Community Loan Fund. Since then, we've expanded to finance other nonprofits who are providing services to Vermonters in need. We finance small businesses and early care and learning enterprises. But housing is still our largest sector that we're financing. Mike, next slide. So this is very similar to what Jen just talked about. You know, the Vermont Community Loan Fund provides both loans to affordable housing and early care and small business, but also opportunities for people to invest in the Vermont Community Loan Fund and have their money be lent out to achieve both a social and to get a financial return. So the returns are dual, a social and financial return. And it's really for the folks that invest in community loan funds really are leading with their values and looking to achieve impact. And that's what I think both New Hampshire and Vermont seek to deliver. Next slide, Mike. Because the next slide I borrowed, frankly, from Jen, because I liked the bucket. And I am just doing my last boil for my backyard sugar operation. So I liked the thinking of this as a sap bucket. But I didn't really like thinking about it as a leaky sap bucket because that just ruins the whole thing. But I borrowed this from New Hampshire, and just like them, we are structured very similarly, although we're a little smaller. We have total assets of 50 million, of which 33 million is from investors, money that is lent to us, and about 17 million is equity that we hold, that's been granted to us. And that equity really, that 17 million, really, we both lend it out, but it also provides the protection for the investors. So any dollars lost in our lending would come out of that bottom 17 million net asset portion of the bucket. And then we deploy, very similar to New Hampshire, into affordable housing, childcare, business, And we've deployed in the past close to 30 years, 115 million throughout Vermont. Mike, next. So focusing on housing, and in particular, investing in housing through the Vermont Community Loan Fund. We have about 600 total investors that have invested that $33 million. About 525 of them are individuals. And individuals provide about 55 to 60% of the dollars that we use. The rest is lent to us by institutions, faith-based groups, banks, foundations, all sorts of, and the government. So we do get some money from the Small Business Administration to re-lend out, borrow money from the government. So the kind of the straightforward way is we issue a promissory note and a loan agreement with investors into the fund. It functions, or it mechanically looks like a bank CD. It's not a CD. It is a straight unsecured loan, but it operates similarly in that there's a fixed term and a fixed interest rate. And we can, I know in the chat, someone asked about rates, and I know it's on a slide further down when we get towards the end, but I will say that the rates between New Hampshire and Vermont were very similar, range anywhere from 0 to 3%, depending on how long of a term you might leave it with a community loan fund. So our current housing portfolio is, as this says, as the slide says, is about 15.5 million. And it totals just over 1,300 individual homes. That's the current portfolio, not historic. Historically, we've lent about 90 million into housing, and it's generated about 5,000 units of housing throughout Vermont. I did look at the Upper Valley. I don't have, I'm going to give you as good an estimate as I could get. Over the past 5 to 6 years, we have lent about 3.5 million in the Vermont side communities of the Vital Community area. And I did not look at how much, unlike Jen, how many investors have invested in VCLF from that area. We do, so the 15.5 million, like it says, is about 53% of our portfolio. And, you know, I listed here some examples of the nonprofit affordable housing developers that I think probably operate at least near or in the Upper Valley. Those are kind of some of the, for the area of Vermont, those are our key partners in the ways in which we finance. We lend to them who are developing the housing. Next slide, Mike. So one of the things I just wanted to focus on, it's not a project, but it's a way to invest in housing that has a pretty interesting return through the state of Vermont. So the state of Vermont back in the early 90s created the Vermont Charitable Housing Tax Credit. This is a tax credit that the state pays you if you invest in VCLF and target your investment towards housing. So the way it works is you invest in VCLF at a 0% return, meaning VCLF's not going to pay you any interest, minimum of $1,000. You would then get a tax credit statement at the end of the year that you would include and file with your Vermont income taxes. You need to have a Vermont income tax liability. You need to have something to credit this tax against. So you need a liability. So you need income in Vermont, essentially. and to be filing an income tax return, a Vermont income tax return. The current rate today of the credit is 1.8%. So you would get so on $1,000, you would get $18.10. Yes, I'm financial, so I got to figure my math out. It adjusts every July 1st. We already know what it's going to adjust. So we know it's going to drop down to 1.25 come July 1st. So if you had an investment with and targeted it towards housing and chose the tax credit option when you invested with VCLF, you would get 1.8% credit for 6 months and a 1.25% credit for the next 6 months. And we would combine those average those 6 months at 1.8, 6 at 1.25, and we'd issue a tax credit statement that you would be able to submit with your taxes. And again, it's a credit, not a deduction, so it's untaxed on its own, so it's a little better. Currently, we have 75 investors, totaling 4.7 million enrolled in that program. Next. That might be the end of my slides. So for more information, go ahead and you can look at our website. It's investinvermont.org. And I can certainly answer any questions here on the chat or afterwards. And so thank you. I'm going to pass it on now to Jen Risley from the local crowd, Monadnock. Jen, you are up.
Thank you, Will, and thanks everybody for being here. I'm Jen Risley. I'm the program manager for the local crowd Monadnock, and I'm also the community success coach for the local crowd. So the local crowd, also called TLC Monadnock, is a community-based crowdfunding program that empowers individuals or teams of individuals to support, empowers individuals to support the businesses and initiatives or teams of individuals that grow wealthier and healthier communities right here in the region. And we're based in Keene, New Hampshire, but we definitely work a lot with Vital Community. So our impacts are beyond the Monadnock region. So very similar to Kickstarter or Indiegogo, we help campaign teams attract small contributions from $5 to $500 from a large number of people to provide the funding they need for a particular effort. Next slide. One TLC Monadnock campaign that focused on supporting affordable housing was launched by a nonprofit based actually in East Dummerston, Vermont, called Sharing Housing. The campaign raised over $10,000 this summer to create a self-paced online course called Discovering Shared Housing. So it's going to help individuals successfully find and keep good housemates. So sharing your home is a viable solution that many people overlook when considering where and how to live, despite the multiple social, environmental, and financial advantages. So sharing housing is on a mission to elevate this as an affordable housing solution. So a number of this campaign's 90 supporters actually received an immediate return on investment, although very small, by claiming a reward as a thank you for their donation. So some supporters claimed a roasted coffee from a much loved Main Street coffee business, handmade face masks at the nick of time when people didn't think they'd have to keep buying them for the summer. They also received books and free consultations offered by Sharing Housing's board of directors. Next slide. So while TLC Monadnock offers rewards-based crowdfunding or donation-based crowdfunding, a platform called Small Change offers real estate investment crowdfunding. So Small Change allows everyday people to invest in real estate projects that change cities and neighborhoods for the better. And so better to small change actually means boosting walkability and bikeability, offering better access to healthy food and green spaces, and elevating attributes to offer a great quality of life. Next slide. So Small Change is actually registered with the SEC as a funding portal. Anyone over the age of 18 can invest. However, there are offerings that only accredited investors can participate in, and each project has a minimum investment level that people can donate. So the slide highlights just 3 of their campaigns, and I thought one of them was really interesting. A business called Dweller, which builds and installs prefab accessory dwelling units, that's a tongue twister, or ADUs, like I like to call them. They offer these in a low-cost, efficient way that allows as many homeowners as possible to benefit from this source of extra income right in their backyard. And then it offers home seekers a source of desperately needed housing. And this is based in the out west. So I'd really love to see someone either launch or support a small change campaign in our region. Most of the campaigns illustrated are from bigger cities, but I don't think it has to be that way. So I'm just kind of asking all you to check it out, and maybe you're going to be one of these investors or one of these real estate developers that gives this platform a try. And you can learn more at smallchange.co. And hand it back to Mike.
All right. Thank you, Ken and Jen and Will and Jen. Pretty awesome stuff there. So this is a chance for all the rest of us to ask the questions that have been building up in our minds. And I'm gonna stop screen sharing so we can maybe all see each other a little bit. And Nancy, you can feed us some of the questions that have been coming in from the chat, and we can all field them.
Great. Yep, there were a few in there, although some have been answered along the way, which is great. But Corey asks, are there action items other than using, and this is from the beginning to like, I'm starting at where the first question was. So this goes back to Ken. Are there action items other than using local banks for our savings needs? It's just a general question, and I'm just going to punt this all to the group.
Sure, I guess I'll start. Certainly there are. Again, we're hopeful that people will make those investments locally. But yeah, sure, there's all kinds of options with large brokerage houses and fintech companies and other large national banks. But again, that money's all going to get put to work somewhere else.
Got it. Let's see. There was a question about what the fixed rate is, say compared to a CD or a savings bank account at the loan funds. And I know that Jen did answer. Somebody answered in the chat, but maybe we could share it with the group too.
Yeah, I thank you for that question. It's a nice way to think about it. And I did put in the chat the link to our web page for the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund, and the page that takes you directly to information about our investing. And you can see that the rate that we pay our investors ranges up to 3%, depending on the length of time that you're putting the investment in, you choose. And so that's the general information, as well as I would say that link that I put in the chat will give you a little more detail about the time frame and how to think about investing and the interest rate over time.
Great. And can the community loan funds or others be the holders of personal retirement funds such as IRAs? I know this was also answered in the chat, but I think it's a great question. Maybe we could share with all.
So yeah, I put in the chat a link at VCLF to a landing page that talks about how one can do it. It's a bit, it's a little, it can be a little bit more expensive, and it can be a little more convoluted in that you need to go through a custodian when you're using an IRA. And we've set up some ways, some folks that you could contact that can do that for you, but it's not as simple as anyone would like it, at least from my perspective.
Hi, this is Ken Kuhnhart from the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund, and I'll just add to Will's comment. Yes, the key is the custodial relationship. you have to find a custodian that is authorized to hold an unsecured promissory note. We have some investment advisors in our network. We currently have 14 of them that introduce us to their clients, and some of them have set up that custodial relationship so it's transparent to us. We have others that have come to us directly, but they have to set up what's called a self-directed IRA account and an established custodian. So they have to set up a second account, as Will referenced, in order for the community loan fund to be able to accept that kind of an investment.
Great. I'm not sure if this was answered as far as Norm, and I don't know if you want to share it, but any comment about VCLF, SD, IRA, strata option?
Well, I pursued it, and that's why I thought to ask the question. Ultimately, I have invested in Vermont Community Loan Fund outside of that vehicle, just because it was easier for me to use after-tax dollars. But I think it's very attractive. And again, we've heard some of Michael Schumann's presentations where he said, there have to be ways to free up money that are entrapped in our retirement funds, which are mutual funds, bonds, and other vehicles that are ultimately Fortune 500 and international in terms of their distribution. By setting up a self-directed IRA, which I think for Vermont Community Loan Fund, once they clarified what the cost was, yeah, it's about $125. But once you set it up, you can transfer money from your IRA that dwarfs the cost, and now you're directing money into your community. And it's not the primary investment vehicle, but if you're comfortable enough, you can direct 5% of your retirement savings, and it's going to go into your local community. So it is clunky now, but at least it's an attractive option. And the other one is the self-directed 401k, which is even more expensive, but frees you up to do a lot more. So they're not for low-income people, but for people that have the resources, they are a way to move serious money into the local community that is otherwise going to Fortune 500 companies that have 3 letters after their name, which doesn't impress me.
Great.
I'm done.
Thanks.
Hi, Norm. This is Paul Tierney. Norm, do you have or could you send out to Michael a list of the brokers that have those self-directed IRAs? I'm especially attracted to your relatively low cost comments in comparison to some of the others that I've looked at. So
Vermont Community Loan Fund works through Strata. And Strata, if it's a registered fund, which the community loan funds are, it's like, and you register online. I hate to start advertising for a company, but if you sign up online and you go to registered funds, it ended up translating to like $125 a year for a self-directed IRA. I've seen another company that offers a 401k at one charge of $300. And that is offered through the Next Egg, which is Mike Schumann's web-based group. I could provide that information. I think that for the Vermont Community Loan Fund, they know the Strata relationship, and they can make their website available. And it links to the current charges.
And to answer your question, Paul, I'll be sending out a follow-up email after this, and we can put those links in there of the links are in there to the Vermont Community Loan Fund, where you can find their link to Strata. And Ken, are there at the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund, is there a section on the self-directed IRA?
No, there isn't. We've taken a different approach. We used to have an exclusive relationship with a trust company in Concord, and it just really didn't work out. So we really I'll be happy to field a call from anyone that's interested What we do is we leave it up to the investor to decide who they want to use as their custodian. Some brokerage firms and investment advisors can custody unsecured promissory notes. Many cannot. And again, it's learning more about self-directed IRAs is really the key. There's lots of great information and companies out there that do provide that service at low cost.
Thanks, Ken. So, and as saying, we'll be sending out a follow-up email and the Vermont Community Loan Fund website with their information on self-directed IRA and the educational materials there at their website. And you can, Ken's contact information's in the follow-up email as well. So be able to contact him if you want to talk about it. Time for another question, I think.
Yeah, well, let me just jump in. There was a question about any TLC campaigns in the Upper Valley. And there is the Local Crowd Upper Valley is a Vital Communities initiative that we started based on Monadnock's success. So they're doing just great stuff there. And we've run several successful campaigns, and there was actually a couple affordable housing campaigns that were scheduled to launch last year when the pandemic hit. So they all, that all just stopped because of obviously the pandemic. So we don't have anything active now, but I think it is a great platform for investing, and it isn't, you don't get a return on your investment. You are investing your dollars as a donation with a token reward to your community development. So we will have some launching. In fact, Jen's helping with it. I don't know if there's no housing ones in there at the moment, but I think it's a great vehicle. So keep your eyes open for when maybe an affordable housing campaign starts there. And then there is a question that was ×2. Liz Cole asks, what would each of you do, and that's to the presenters, if you had twice the money you have now? So where would you put your money, I guess, is the question.
I think this is my favorite question ever. Thank you, Liz. We dream big. And there's just a small picture of a strategy that we're looking at now in housing that is looking at the real crisis that there are just not enough homes available at the right price point, and especially in manufactured home communities that are already permitted, already zoned right, but might have vacant lots that we can bring new homes in, right? They're shovel ready in a way. So that's a strategy that we're looking at, twice the money, 3 times the money, 3 times the impact that we could really roll out, including in the Upper Valley, in the towns of Lebanon, Enfield, Claremont, right now that we can create that new housing stock, serves the community, serves the homeowners, and the affordability, the typical home price is about $90,000. So that's just the home price range that we really want to see new homes created. So that's my wish list. If anybody out there is right up there is listening, and really it's all because of the investments that we have in the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund that we're able to launch those strategies and ramp them up.
Great. Will, are you, any ideas for if the loan fund had twice the amount of money, how, what would you do with it?
Twice the amount of money. One of the housing, and I'm gonna stick with housing. The state of housing in Vermont, and I'm sure this is the same in New Hampshire, is really difficult for lower income, lower wealth folks. Prices, while interest rates have stayed low, prices for both home ownership and the cost of developing new affordable apartments, just the material and labor costs are really driving costs up. And so it is right now, the demand for housing is high, the supply is low, and I would use more capital to try to drive more development of affordable housing throughout Vermont. Probably we still have not seen the level of affordable single family home development, that really has been very difficult in Vermont. Most of the affordable homes, most of the affordable shelter is in multi-unit affordable housing projects. And the demand for those throughout Vermont is high, and that's where I would start investing if we had twice the money.
Great. I don't know if Ken, if you have an answer for that.
Yeah, I think our CFO would probably have a heart attack. But if we had a significant, I mean, it's not double, but just with all the federal support, we've had a significant influx of deposits, either from PPP loans or from stimulus checks and so on. So really, I mean, the real effect of that is that we need, we're being more aggressive in how we lend that out. And what that would mean would be kind of lower rates to consumers, and we would kind of more actively seek out lending opportunities. Just, yeah, wouldn't want it all at once.
Great.
I think the important thing to understand as far as how CDFIs are structured is, remember, you looked at the maple sugar bucket, and we have investor capital, but we have our own equity, and it's our own equity that stands to protect investors from any losses. So we use the hand rule. For every $4 of investments, we need $1 of donations in order to support that ratio and keep it close to the 20% level, which is what our objective is. So we can't take in an unlimited amount of investments without having the supportive equity as well, the donations and the grants to go along with it.
Well, thank you. What great perspectives, information. I've learned so much already, and we're just scratching the surface. But I'm going to start sharing my screen again, because I want to move us toward how can we all take action if we are ready to do that. And so let me figure out how to share screen again and see if that's coming through for everybody. You should see a ladder. Does that everyone see that? All right. Nancy's nodding, so it must be coming through for somebody. We put this ladder here to kind of give a context for looking at all of these opportunities at the same time, or side by side rather. You can see there's a lot of different types of capital that are here. It's kind of an informal to bottom, formal to top, and where sort of the opportunities we've talked about tonight fit in there, and sort of a side by side of the dollar returns that you might get from some of these investments. More interesting, at least to me, is all the social and environmental returns that we've talked about. But then you also heard something about the risk factors and ways that they're mitigated by different kinds of, by Mascoma Bank, and then the community loan funds, and then local crowd. So I'd say that use this slide perhaps as a kind of reminder or starting point as you're ready to take action, which I think sort of looking at the next slide, how can you act? And who would you get in touch with? And if you need to learn more, where can you look? And particularly interesting and kind of fun to read about is, how can you see the impact you're having? We've really talked about that. That's what matters to us. That's why we would invest locally instead of just saying, all right, I want to earn as much as I can. We'll take the easy button of going to some retirement savings in a mutual fund far away, where we don't know what happens. Here we get to see the impact on our neighbors and on our own communities. You don't have to write all this down. Again, it's coming at you in a follow-up email that'll go to everyone who's registered. If there are more questions, that's got a set of slides here as well with the websites and emails, contact for people who've been on tonight or been referenced tonight. And then that brings us kind of to the thank you here. I think that,
Excuse me, Mike, could I just interject for a second?
yes,
This is
please, Paul.
Tierney, and you must know Andrew at the Twin Pines Housing Trust. Now, a source of funding which is not on your ladder is grants of various kinds, and I understand that he's a real expert at getting grants as part of the funding. So, you know, I'd be interested in having a presentation by him of how, you know, how the grants work, how he gets them, and, you know, all of that, because I think that grants could fit in as a piece of, you know, various funding mechanisms. And so, excuse me for interrupting, but I thought you should know that.
Thank you, Paul. And I think Andrew's on the call tonight. And it is an important part. There's such a thing as the capital stack. And we actually are talking, which is all the different pieces of money that Andrew and other professional developers have to bring together to do a project like Tracy Street, like Ken showed us earlier. And we're actually thinking about a session this fall to talk about the capital stack and how can we as local individuals or as local groups be a significant part of that capital stack. So I'm glad you brought it up. And you know, our focus tonight has really been on how can we as individuals use mechanisms that exist right now. And so I feel pretty lucky that we have them, you know, that through our local banks, through these community loan funds that we are fortunate enough to have in our environment, through the crowdfunding that Jen helps make available to us and that others have, we have the power as individuals with even a small amount of savings to make a difference. So I'm pretty impressed by that. And I'm going to stop sharing just because I want to see if anyone wants to have the last word here.
Mike, I would just really applaud the effort of the community around Vital Communities, including the way that you've really brought people together to think through what does local investing look like. And I've just seen it bloom over the winter. And I couldn't applaud you all for being in that question. I think you can see a lot of good ways to get at it. I think it's a just fascinating, high impact question to be in. So thank you for that.
Well, thanks, Jen. Yeah, it's nice to have an outsider look at us and say, hey, you guys are pretty cool. So thank you. All right, then I invite us to go all enjoy a beautiful sunset and a fine evening. And I'm so grateful that you're all here tonight and looking forward to figuring out what we do with our twice the money that we're going to get to the community loan funds in Mascoma. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you.
all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.